If you guys are stuck in the back and there's room out down front, come on in, don't be bashful. Our next speaker, Loretta DeLestro, she is a mother, first and foremost, who lost her son to this terrible disease as well. She came all the way from Simi Valley, California. I've never met her in person. I know she knows a lot of us here from Facebook, and she's an activist and advocate. She was at the Fed Up rally over in Washington, D.C., which is kind of something that we would really like to see Nevada be a part of. Is maybe next year in September, getting a group of people going across to the Fed Up rally over there in Washington, D.C. So, Loretta, please welcome her.
Hi everyone, I am from California and it's wonderful to be here and what a great turnout for you. I'm so happy. I know firsthand the devastation that comes with heroin use because, as Joe said, I lost my son. On a cold January morning right after the new year, he relapsed, and like many families, we found him dead in his bedroom. His stepfather found him in his room. I was at work, and I was given that horrible call to come home. And I could talk to you about the sadness of grief, and I could go on about how terrible it is to lose a child, and you would be very sympathetic. Sympathy is finite, but grief is forever. And we don't have forever tonight, so I'm going to get right down to business. Why I'm really here is to show you guys in Nevada what we were able to do in California. After my son passed, there was a period of grief and mourning. I had a lot of time on my hands. I did a little research. And I found out a lot about heroin overdoses that I didn't know before, and I thought I was a pretty savvy mom. I didn't realize that overdoses were not always instantaneous, that they can take anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, that there were signs that were visible when someone goes into overdose. And I realized that people who use IV drugs generally use them together, but they're always found dead alone. And this kind of infuriated me, especially when it happened after I lost my son. A 17-year-old boy from my neighborhood was using heroin with 2 of his friends at a park behind my house. His father was a somewhat famous football player back in the day. He was a quarterback for, I think it was the Denver Broncos. Anyway, his father was Eric Kramer, and the boy's name was Griffin Kramer. He was a football prodigy, 17 years old, a star. Well, he and 2 friends decided to shoot heroin at the park. Griffin immediately began foaming at the mouth, and rather than call 911, they brought him home, put him in bed, and went to a homecoming party. This is not uncommon. A lot of times kids are afraid to call 911 because they're going to get in trouble. They may be on probation, maybe even parole. Maybe they told their parents, or one spouse might be using and promises the other spouse never again. And if they get caught at the scene of an overdose, boy, there's going to be some trouble. There's a lot of reasons why people don't call 911, but it's based in fear. And I'm here to tell you that you guys need a Good Samaritan 911 bill. And because I'm such a rebel, I've broken the law, and I've taken across state lines naloxone. How many of you know what naloxone is? Okay, great. We have a naloxone bill in California as well, and I was somewhat instrumental in getting it into the pharmacies to where people can go into the pharmacy like Rite Aid or Walgreens and simply say to the pharmacist, I need naloxone, someone I know and live with is on opiates. And they'll get it. They'll pay for it, Medi-Cal will cover it, but they can get it, and you do not need a prescription. That's what a little mensch like me did in Sacramento, and you guys can do it at your state capital too. Naloxone is cheap to make, It is not a drug, it is not an amphetamine, it's not an upper, it's an alkaloid. It's called an opiate antagonist. It was created by Dr. Jack Fishman, who was a Polish immigrant, a child of the Holocaust. He was trying to create an analgesic for people who were in the hospital and were getting pain medications, because back in the day, that was the only place you could get pain medications. And people were uncomfortable. They weren't able to go to the bathroom. They had a lot of gastro distress. And Dr. Fishman thought, maybe I could make something to flush the opioid out of the body. He had no idea that he would create the only antidote for opioid overdose. That includes Vicodin. That includes Zomas, fentanyl, heroin, morphine, Opana. Did I say Opana? No? Okay. Demerol, methadone, any opiate. This will flush the opiate off the receptor. When heroin goes into the body, it goes to a very specific place. We have thousands of opiate receptors in the back of our head, and the heroin will sit very nicely on them. And that's what stops breathing. When you see a friend or a person or a loved one begin to start maybe getting a little blue around the lips or the fingernails, and you can't wake them by shrugging them or saying their name or yelling police, they're in overdose. And there's a few things you can do right away, but there's a lot of things you should never do. And when I talk to young people, some of you are in here, don't try to put them in a tub of water. Don't try to inject them with cocaine or methamphetamine. Breathe for them. You have to breathe into their mouth like it's your job, because it is your job. If you're at the scene of an overdose, you must stay. You must breathe for that individual, and if you are lucky enough to get naloxone in your state, you would give them a shot of naloxone in the arm. The needle is very thick. It's designed to go through muscle, even clothes. You can inject it into the arm or the abdomen or even the buttocks. This is a lifesaver. It costs about $10 or $15. A funeral is anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000. Why do you not have naloxone in Nevada? People might be afraid that, well, you know, if I have naloxone in my house, maybe my son or daughter will do opiates and shoot heroin even more because they know they can be saved. And the opposite is true. No one wants to be Narcaned out of a heroin session. It's painful. It puts you into withdrawal right away. But something kind of miraculous happens to the person who is administering the naloxone. It's called peer-to-peer rescue. If you're, 2 drug addicts or 3 drug addicts, IV drug users, I understand addiction now. I didn't years ago, but I do now. And if your friend goes out and you remember the training that someone like myself would give, where I say, do this and then do that and then call 911, and you bring that person back, the person who gives the naloxone is more likely to stop using drugs altogether than the person who was overdosing. Why do you think that is? Because people who use drugs feel worthless. Nobody wants to be an IV drug addict. No one. Well, that's quite a mouthful there, isn't it? There's a lot I could talk to you about Narcan or naloxone. How did I find out about it? I'm just a mom. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I got online. I got on the telephone. I started to make calls to people, and I told them what happened to me, what was happening in my neighborhood, because after I lost my son, they were dropping like flies. But they weren't 27. They were 17 and 19 and 20 and 21. And I couldn't take it. So I told this story, not quite in this tone, but I got someone's attention. And they said, I can help you. I think I can help you. And they put me in touch with an organization on our Skid Row in California who deals with the dredges of humanity, the homeless, the drug addicts, the sex workers. And they're all on heroin. And they all use naloxone, and guess what? They're not dying. Some are seeking treatment. Some are not. It's not a cure. Some will use Narcan on a victim. The victim will come to, possibly go out and use again and die. I'm not going to lie. But you have a fighting chance if you can restore breathing within a minute before the ambulance gets there. Your victim is breathing again, especially if you followed the steps, which is to look for signs. The gurgling, the snoring that isn't just like regular snoring. It's a different kind of noise. They're not able to wake up. They're discolored around the mouth. If they're African American, their skin will be ashy. If they're Caucasian, they'll be gray or blue. This is scary stuff to tell a parent. But when I had a training in my home for moms and dads of high-risk children, I had it around November, just before Thanksgiving. By January, 2 lives were saved because, as we know, the holidays are lots of fun when you have children that are abusing drugs. So when I heard that 2 were saved, I said I need to do another training, and I did. 7 children are now alive just because of me. I'm just one person. Well, thank you for hearing my story.
Wow, it's a big deal. Thank you so much, Loretta, for coming out and sharing that. We have some specialty courts here in Nevada. One of them is a youth offenders court. We have the judge who's presiding over that court as well. But before we call him up, we have a couple of recent graduates from Yo Court, youth offenders. They call it Yo Court, and they're just marvelous examples of what can happen when people get into recovery. And I consider them very close friends, and I'm really happy to have them here. I'm going to call up Nanny first. Come on up, Nanny.
Okay, hi everybody. I didn't think of what I was going to say. I only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to make my story very short. I discovered drugs and alcohol at a very young age, around 11 or 12. I discovered heroin when I was 16 years old. Pills first, but it wasn't too long before I got into heroin use. I graduated high school. I don't know how I did, but after that, I kind of fell off. My mom and my dad, they were very unaware of my heroin use. They just thought I drank. I got pregnant right out of high school with my daughter. I did not stop using heroin. I just had so many consequences. I couldn't stop breaking the law. I couldn't stop using. I tried quitting on my own. There's just so much that I did in my past. CPS took my firstborn. And that was, even when they took her, I felt like that I was inclined to, like, it was almost like baggage was gone. I was so deep in my disease that nothing else mattered. I was homeless. I didn't have hygiene. I didn't wash my hair, comb my hair. I had no shoes on. I was dirty all the time. Everyone knew. Some people would just hand me money because they knew. I tried going into treatment. That didn't work. And then I just disappeared. I didn't talk to my family. No one knew where I was. Didn't talk to my daughter. Shortly after that, I met Blake, my boyfriend I'm still with today, and we got in the disease even deeper. I got pregnant with my son Aiden, who was yelling mama back there. And I still didn't stop, unfortunately. It took about, up until I was 6 months pregnant, I had warrants and cases, and Blake had a case, and we got arrested by one of Judge Kearns' marshals. They came to pick up Blake, and when he ran my name, he didn't find my warrant. It was in Boulder City. And so when Blake went to jail, I left. I left the house and I ran right back into the marshal, and I was crying, and it was pretty sad, I went to jail. I got OR'd. I relapsed right away. I had tried everything, but it's just so cunning, this disease. It's crazy. Nothing has ever brought me to my knees like heroin has. And so Blake joined Yo Court, and then I got a phone call one day. I was taking Suboxone to get off of it. My dad helped me get into a sober living house. I was about 7 months pregnant at that time with Aiden. And then I got a phone call by one of Judge Kearns' case managers saying, do you want to come to court? Do you want to be a part of? And so I showed up, and I realized shortly after that it wasn't all about me, and I realized that I wanted to try this recovery thing, and today I have almost 2 years sobriety now. And Judge Kearns, like, it's crazy. I remember one day when I showed up to court, no, I didn't call him crazy. When I showed up, the program, I was like, what am I getting myself into, really? And Judge Kearns, he told me one day, I know you're capable. And so I just literally, both feet in, jumped right into recovery, and I like this life today. I like being a mom, and I love... I love that Joe is, he's bringing like resources and, nonprofits and awareness out there, because people need to know, people don't understand, and being someone who's had the experience of being in the disease, like, it's something I just want to help people get out of, and, today I'm a mom. I graduated Yale Court in January, and, thank you, Judge Kearns. I didn't get to thank you. So I'm assuming my 2 minutes is up, but that's all I have. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Annie. I wanted to say after Loretta was talking, and I got sidetracked.